You're a simp for socialism done left. Are we simping for bread tubers now? I don't really simp for very many, like political streamers. Does that make me the odd one out? Nobody went for Prager. What about Irish Daddy? His confidence is what is sexy, you know? Alright, anyway, let's watch this debate time.
Economic inequality has become a central issue in our current political discourse, as nations around the world face a reckoning on race and social justice and work to contain the economic damage from the pandemic.
We have a choice in this country.
As if we need to do anything to get conservative men interested in femcock. Guys, you have no idea how many conservative men constantly invade my DMs. You have no idea.
And that choice is either great wealth in the hands of a few or a democracy.
Is it time to redistribute the wealth?
Pointing to billionaires and saying we should take their money away may feel good, but it's an ineffective political strategy.
Two perspectives.
How else are you going to take a lot of wealth from rich people and give it to poor people if it's not through taxation?
On a cornerstone of our economic future.
It's not a debate about the wealth tax. I'm far more concerned about corporate wealth, the accumulation of gargantuan power.
Join us for That's Debatable, presented by Bloomberg and Intelligence Squared.
Sorry, my boobs need shuffling. There we go. I would never cheat on you. Just found your channel today, but now you're the only one for me.
From Washington, D.C., I'm John Donvan,
Thank you.
Your
I'm
host
glad you
and
understand
moderator,
the dynamic.
and welcome to That's Debatable, an interactive series on today's most pressing issues. The resolution: it's time to redistribute the wealth. 44% of the world's wealth is owned by the richest 1% alone. Is that a trend that merits disruption? We presented that question to our two teams of two. Against the motion, Larry Summers, former U.S. Treasury Secretary, and Alison Schrager, senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute. Arguing for the motion, Yanis Varoufakis.
Jaru Lee, femcock or girl dick. It's just, you know, when a girl has a dick. You know? Whether it's because they're trans or because they're, like, intersex or something, you know?
Former finance minister of Greece, and Robert Reich, former U.S. Secretary of Labor. Let's go to their opening statements.
What we need to
Innsmouth
understand
swim team. I
is
wish you had a
that,
dick
and
too.
many
I'm
of
sorry,
you already know this, this country cannot afford to do many of the things it needs to do. Our infrastructure is crumbling. It is falling apart. Many of our schools, our public schools in working class and poor areas, are overcrowded. The classrooms have 30 to 40 kids. Teachers are underpaid. The facilities are bad. We also know that there is a dearth of basic research and development in this country. People are concerned about American competitiveness, but we are not doing much about it in terms of basic R&D. And healthcare. We know there are huge numbers of people who are not able to afford health insurance, millions of Americans. During this period of coronavirus, it is all worse because we have something in the order of 35 million Americans who are out of work. Many of them are trying to decide between paying the rent and putting food on the table. We have an extraordinary number of children who are at this moment either homeless or hungry or both. Now, where is that money going to come from?
True. Guys, like in this country right now, we have like, last time I checked the numbers, and remember that I literally work with a nonprofit that specializes in children's hospitals. Last time I checked, we had something around 5 million kids in this country completely uninsured, and then another 40 plus million, I think 45 million-ish, that are underinsured and only have, like, Medicaid. And for those of you who've never been on Medicaid, Medicaid doesn't cover the full cost of, like, actual healthcare. It just covers part of the cost. So you either have, we have around 50 million either uninsured or underinsured kids in the United States right now in supposedly a good privatized healthcare system. I don't know. I just want kids to have healthcare that isn't determined by the wealth of the family they happen to be born into, you know?
Come from. It turns out that the typical American pays about 25 to 30% of his or her income in taxes right now. If you include sales taxes and property taxes, every tax, about 25 to 30%. But if you're a billionaire today, you're actually paying 23% on average. In other words, the richer you are, if you're very much at the very, very top, you are paying a lower tax rate. That's not only unfair, but at a time when so many people are so desperate and so many people are struggling so hard.
True! Proportionately, the rich and the hyper wealthy in this country over the last, I think, 2 years have been paying less proportions of their income than the working class. And the justification for that is, well, they don't need to pay a higher portion of their income because a small portion of their income is way more than the working class ever pays. Despite the fact that the working class actually needs all of their money in order to fucking live. And the other part of this is that people make the argument that, like, oh, the rich, it's unfair to tax the rich more because most of their wealth isn't in liquid assets, meaning, like, it's not cash money. But, like, that doesn't matter, though, because they, like, the reason they put their money into, like, physical things or stocks in order to make more money. So, like, they can just sell those things that they're constantly putting money into to make more money. Earnings tax? Hell yeah, Revolt Rise.
It is unwarranted. It's bad policy.
Yeah, so unfair to make them sell some equities, right?
Let me just add one other very important fact here, and just quote Justice Brandeis to say, we have a choice in this country, and that choice is either great wealth in the hands of a few or a democracy. We can't have both because money at the top turns into political power.
These are really sort of wild estimates, often based on some very dubious assumptions. In fact, the numbers you just heard cited by our opponent might be off more than a factor of 4. And the reason why we know so little is most of the richest Americans made their money starting their own companies, which they held close.
Like, would you advocate for a tax policy where it's like, well, the working class bought, put their money into, some. They bought solid gold, so we're just not going to tax them because they put all of their money into gold. No, that's not how taxes work. Right, and I can speak from absolute certainty in saying that they own cars, paintings, horses, all bullshit with no value to anyone but other rich fucks. It's all a tax shell game. Exactly. I would go completely broke and destitute if there was a cuteness tax.
And managed as they grew rich. If you look at the Forbes 400 richest Americans, 8 of the 10 top richest Americans all got rich starting their own companies. And 2/3 of the full 400 are self-made entrepreneurs. And unlike stock or a publicly held company, it's not.
Why does the top 400 richest people, why does that matter that they're self-made entrepreneurs? That doesn't fundamentally change the relationship they have with capital. Because, again, a lot of those people, when you say they're self-made with a helpful loan of $5 million from daddy,
It's only hard to put a value on a privately held company. It's also really hard to sell.
Wait, she's an author of a book called An Economist Walks into a Brothel? What is that? An Economist walks into a brothel. What is this? Is it worth swimming in shark-infested waters to surf a 50-foot career record wave, Riskier to make an action move or a horror movie? Should sex workers forfeit 50% of their income for added security or take a chance and keep the extra money? What? Most people wouldn't expect an economist to have an answer to these questions or to other questions of daily life. But these people haven't met Alison Schrager, an economist and award-winning journalist who spent her career examining how people manage risk in their lives and careers. We all take risks large and small every day. Even the most cautious among us cannot opt out. Question is always which risks to take and not whether to take them at all. What most of us don't know is how to measure these risks and maximize the chances of getting what we want out of life. I don't know that an economist is necessarily equipped to answer those questions, though. Like, why... They're framing this question as like an economic question, like something that an economist is equipped to deal with. But like, the economy and like risk to like bodily harm, those are two very different things. Who among us hasn't benefited from a tax-free $18 million endowment? Yeah, for sure, for sure. Man, fewer people are watching me now than when I was actually playing Sekiro. That's wild to me.
And most rich people are much richer on paper and don't have a lot of liquid wealth to pay the tax, which means paying it will force them to sell their companies sooner, usually to private equity.
Why would that force them to sell their company sooner? They would still be making money from the company. Why would that force them to sell it sooner? Why is selling their company a bad thing for the economy?
Funds who will have a say in management and be a lot more short-term focused. Now, other countries have grappled with this when they had wealth taxes, and the way around it was maybe limiting the wealth tax based on how much income or financial assets they had. But this just created tons of loopholes, which allowed them to get around paying the tax. In fact, lack of compliance is why so few countries tax wealth. In 1990, 12 European countries tax wealth. Not only 4 do, and the tax rates are very low and make up a really trivial amount of their total tax revenue. Switzerland probably collects the most in wealth taxes, and it's only 3% of their total tax revenue. A wealth tax also, because it's so hard to value, creates an incentive to keep a company private for longer and not do that IPO. That could mean possibly the next Amazon won't be sold in...
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know what she's trying to get at here. She's, like, arguing against herself. Oh, they didn't want to comply? Well, then we should invest in the IRS. Pretty simple stuff.
Public markets, which in some ways worsens inequality, because it means the average American doesn't have access to own our best fast-growing companies.
What? The average American can't own these companies. What the fuck is she talking about?
So even if you think we should need to tax rich people more, or even if you don't, and you just think we need more revenue to pay for all of the services we want, or just...
This woman wrote a book about how to manage risk in your life, and I'm just like, everything that she said has been awful.
Pay off our debts, and you think it's better to tax rich people than lower income people. Redistributing wealth, or a wealth tax, is a terrible way to do it.
The wealth tax is just one way, and not the most efficient way. I would agree with you. Look, you were referring to wealth creation as if we live in a front porch community where, wealth is distributed in proportion to the entrepreneurship, of the neighborhood baker, butcher, and brewer. That's not the world we live in. Take Jeff Bezos. You mentioned Amazon. He's a smart man. He innovated. He got a lot of money. Good on him. Good on him. But which part of his 200 billion is due to his entrepreneurship? And which part of it is due to the simple fact that his wealth breeds more wealth? Because, as we know, the ultra-wealthy grow rich in their sleep, as it were. It's got nothing to do with hard work, with risk-taking or economizing, while millions...
Well, Arkazinkas, he became the financial minister of Greece after the crash. So he helped to save Greece's economy from utter and complete destitution.
Billions are not so much left behind, but they are held behind because the wealth concentration and the power of big business, they conspire to cause stagnation for the majority. Uber market power enables corporations to usurp
exactly.
markets,
Like the things she said did not make sense. Like, and I don't know. This is just weird to hear coming from someone who's supposedly trained as an economist.
Justice, to capture regulators, to pad political campaigns, in short, to poison our liberal democracy.
Is she actually an economist? Yeah, she's like an economist and a
Theodore
journalist.
Roosevelt famously broke up Standard Oil, against the background of a huge cacophony of those screaming blue murder about the attack on innovation and entrepreneurship and so on. However, those democratic acts of redistributing power and wealth together eventually ushered in capitalism's finest hour. Now, sadly, since the end of Bretton Woods, we have allowed cartels to dominate again. We face a stark option. Let the ultra-rich continue to snuff out society's potential by constantly redistributing wealth from the producers to themselves, or alter the direction of distribution from the ultra-rich to society's innovators and maintainers. The added bonus being a chance for democracy to breathe again. As for how to do this, there are many different tools. The wealth tax is just one.
We're debating whether an approach based on a politics of envy that starts by putting the central problem as being tearing down the people who are most successful is the right approach to that problem.
Yeah, because they're most successful in a predatory system, my dude.
Or instead, a politics of inclusion, building up, bubbling up to support prosperity is the right way forward. That's the approach that I favor, and it's the reason why I oppose this resolution. The wealth tax. These kinds of approaches are symbolic. They're not effective. There's a practical tax reform agenda. It raises the capital gains tax rate. It ensures that everybody complies with the income tax. It eliminates a range of tax shelters. It can raise $4 trillion, far more than any reasonable estimate that any reputable economist supports for the wealth tax, and can do it without arguing that there are people who need to be torn down. Now, look, I'm worried about political money. We should repeal Citizens United. We should change the laws that allow all kinds of giving to PACs, especially in non-transparent ways. Here's what will happen if you actually try to say that people's wealth has to go away. They'll give their money.
Whoa, but that's not what they're saying, Larry. They aren't saying that, like, they have to, like, give up all of their wealth. They're saying is you just pay, like, more in taxes because you have more. Yeah. What?
To so-called charities. Those charities will intervene in all the political process that way. And if you don't like the Koch brothers and what they do to American politics right now, you will have far more of it. If you tell them that they can't keep their wealth and they can give it to whatever they want, and they'll give it to something that will do much more.
What the fuck is he talking about? The Koch brothers already do this. The rich in our country already do this. What they're gonna give their money to a far more effective organization? What? The rich already protect the rich's the interests of the rich. It's literally what they invented super PACs to do. What the fuck is he talking about?
To subvert the process. So the most important thing that I've learned is that it's not enough to care. You have to count carefully and rigorously if you want to make the world a better place. And framing the problem in terms of tearing down the most successful people isn't the way to fix those schools. It isn't the way to clean the air. It isn't the way to repair a decaying infrastructure. Building from the middle class without a politics of envy is the way.
But it's not a politics of envy. It's saying, hey, you have more money, so you can afford more taxes. And like, yeah, proportionally, they should be paying more of their income in taxes, not less, which is what they do now.
This is not about the politics of envy. This is about a concern about the relationship between wealth and power. Wealth translates into power.
Yes.
Larry Summers and I have both served in the government. Both of us know what that means.
Stop advertising what's coming up in, like, your own fucking video.
And now we move on to round two, and that's where the debaters take questions from me and also from you in our audience. The resolution is this: it is time to redistribute the wealth. And I want to go back to Robert Reich to start with my first question. Is your argument that imbalance in and of itself is the thing that's destructive to democracy, or is it the particular kind of imbalance we have now?
Well, let me make the argument very, very clear, John. This is not about the politics of envy. This is about a concern about the relationship between wealth and power. Wealth translates into power. Larry Summers and I have both served in the government. Both of us know what...
Yeah, Larry Summers is like, if you tax the rich more, they'll try and subvert democracy. Yeah. Like they do right now. Like, we have studies about this. We know that the rich already subvert democracy. Everyone knows it.
What that means. It's not only campaign contributions and lobbying. It's also huge amounts of money into public relations campaigns, into hiring squadrons, platoons of lawyers who can appeal and contest regulatory proceedings under the radar. It's all sorts of ways in which big money, even paying off professors to testify for the things that the wealthy want. All of these ways in which you get a kind of vicious cycle of wealth creating political change that alters the market to reward wealth that generates more wealth and therefore more political change in the direction of wealth. That's what we've seen over the last 50 years. That's why so many people think that the game is rigged against them.
Let me take that to Allison Schrager then. What's your take on that?
Well, I mean, do we feel that way about how Bill Gates is spending his money trying to cure COVID, trying to cure diseases in Africa? And besides, I mean, I'm not...
What are these images behind her? Like this Einstein Atari bullshit? What is this? All right, whatever.
Gonna sort of deny that certainly wealthy use their money to gain power, but a lot of that is happening at the corporate level. And I think we're talking about individual wealth, not corporate wealth. And besides, if we want to address this problem, we should address it directly. As Larry's pointed out, there's ways...
Damn, you're right. We should also tax corporate wealth. You're right.
We can address the, problems with campaigns, giving all this sort of political influence. We don't have to redistribute wealth to do it. Let's just solve the problem directly.
So let me take that to Yanis. But take on Allison's point that the kinds of problems that your team has been talking about so far could be addressed other ways than having to take money away from rich people.
It's not a debate about the wealth tax.
Canadian left support.
I'm far more concerned about corporate wealth, the accumulation of gargantuan power in the hands of very few corporations that distort markets, usurp markets, push real investment down, leading to what Larry Summers has described quite aptly as secular stagnation. In order to get out of this, we're not going to get out of this through tweaking income tax. I'll grant you yet again that we are not going to get out of it through wealth taxes, but we need to have a shift in the distribution of ownership, of wealth, of shares, of control over corporations. We need something, that's why I mentioned Theodore Roosevelt. We need to break up monopolies. This is all about redistributing power and wealth. This is exactly what happened in 1901. It's also what happened under the New Deal, when FDR put the financial genie in the bottle, as I said. So let's have a discussion about whether wealth should be redistributed, and let's then have another discussion about particular ways of doing it.
I want to take that to you, Larry. Yanis did not use the word socialism yet, but he is talking about a major reorganization of the way things are done. I
mean, it's literally a wealth redistribution panel. So I mean that makes sense to answer that fundamental question first. In the capitalist part of the world, as in terms of wealth distribution, as a way to address this issue and inequality. So can you respond to that?
So I'm not sure exactly what Yanis has in mind. He's written that we should end capitalism itself and that there shouldn't be any market where shares in companies could be traded. I think that's a strategy that will lead to massive declines in everybody's income, and that's hardly the way to benefit.
Most people don't own stocks. Most people do not participate in a share-based economy. That's reserved for the wealthy among our society, okay?
The middle class. I believe that we should pursue a set of policies that would reduce the influence of money in politics. As I look, it's mostly corporations that do damage. It's mostly large coalitions, the sugar producers, the trade association representing 7,000 banks in the United States, the million realtors that keep prices high. We got to do something about those kinds of exploitations with political money. But a wealth tax isn't going to do that. Bob knows, actually, because he's been around all of this as much as I have, that you can be an enormous player around a political party if you contribute $6 million. There's no wealth tax we're talking about. There's no proposal they're making that's going to go anywhere near making Jeff Bezos or who's ever number 400 on the Forbes 400 unable to be a big player in money.
I'm like, guys, you understand, right, that well, yeah, none of the policies that have been discussed yet do prevent someone from donating $6 million. You understand that, there's a big difference between someone being able to funnel $6 million into a political race and having, a super PAC with dark money that has, a couple $1 billion in the war chest, right? You guys understand the difference there? You can do an awful lot more with billions of dollars backing up a political party than you can with a couple $1 million. So, yeah, I'm for getting all money out of politics, but, if we can reduce the number of people who can pour $1 billion into a campaign, then, yeah, I think that's good. Fucking Mike Bloomberg ran for president. He dropped, $500 million on his race like it was nothing.
In politics. You're just not going to go at it in an effective way by trying to take their money away. You can go at it by trying to insulate the system from the effects of money with all kinds of rules about transparency and all kinds of rules about where the donations can go. And so the question is whether the center of your strategy is trying to tear down the people who have been most successful, or whether the
Larry, it's a conversation about wealth redistribution. Just say whether you're for or against it.
The strategy is to allow people to be successful, to protect the system from being subverted, and to pick everybody else up. Is the problem that some people have billions, or is the problem that most people don't have hundreds of thousands? If we start from The idea that we want to do what's most effective for the people with hundreds of thousands will get to the right kinds of answers. But
most people in this country don't have hundreds of thousands of dollars. What the fuck is he talking about?
Redistribute.
The average wage, yearly wage in America is like $33,000. And the people making that money can't like save all of it year over year because, you know, they have to live. Most people aren't making this money. What is he talking about?
The wealth won't be the central theme.
If I can say something, I want to suggest...
Like historically, guys, you know, over time, capitalism has a way of consolidating wealth at the top. We've seen it happen time and time again. That's what happened in the 1920s, and then the market broke, which, by the way, it does every 5 to 7 years for the most part. And it broke so badly when because the wealth was so consolidated at the top. And it took the war era material conditions plus all of the reforms of FDR in order to pull us back from that brink of destruction and basically, more equitably distribute wealth to try and prevent the exact same situation that we're in now, a century later. Oh, did I know that I'm still on Sekiro? Hooded Death, thank you very much. I forgot to switch over. I will switch over to politics. I'm a good streamer.
As gently as I can that my very, very esteemed opponents are putting on the table a bunch of red herrings.
Yeah, he's correct.
As Yanni keeps saying,
this guy, super smart, Robert Reich. Holy shit. Everything he's said has been like batting 100. I don't think I've ever listened to him talk before, but yeah, everything he's saying 100% on point so far.
We're not debating a wealth tax. In fact, probably the best way of generating revenue, not just in terms of protecting democracy, but also generating revenue for all the other things we need to do.
Robert Reich might be a total lib, which, you know, makes sense because he's a former U.S. labor secretary, but like, that doesn't change the fact that everything he's said here has been correct.
Would be higher levies on capital gains and eliminating the stepped-up basis used to calculate capital gains at death, broadening the estate tax base, closing loopholes and shelters disproportionately used by the wealthy, such as carried interest. And I could go through a long list. But the point is that all of these require that you accept the notion that now is the time to redistribute wealth. That is what all of these notions are about. In fact, Larry Summers, I want to congratulate you because everything I just listed, you put into a paper published recently about what policies are appropriate. And I want to agree with you publicly. These are all good ideas. But tell me that these are not about redistributing wealth. Of course they are about redistributing wealth. That's what they do. They redistribute wealth. They don't vilify the wealthy. This is not about tearing anybody down. This is about generating revenue and also indirectly, and we can talk more about it, about protecting the democratic process.
The only way you can do massive wealth redistribution is through a wealth tax, or I guess as Giannis suggests, some sort of collectivization that's sort of either Stalinist or Maoist.
What? Everything she says is bad. What the hell? You have to have a Stalinist or Maoist policies?
When did I exactly suggest that, Allison?
Yeah, holy shit. You can literally print money and give it to poor people, you fuck.
Allison Schrager, your opponent, Robert, in his opening said, again, we need the money is there. That all of society could be lifted through investment in infrastructure, basic R&D.
Again, I find it really funny that she literally has a picture of a socialist on her wall behind her, and is just like, oh, you're to the left of me? You must be for Stalin. What the hell?
That's where the money is. My question to you is, can that money be found in the pockets of the wealthy and brought constructively into the broader society and used that way.
I mean, this is
without
this is
consequence.
this is a Bloomberg panel, so I'm not surprised.
Without negative consequences.
Well, it depends how you do it. I mean, I definitely agree with right here that, the best way to reform taxes is to remove distortions, broaden the base. No one likes stepped up in basis, which is just a way of sort of avoiding estate taxes, which I've never heard a good argument for. But the thing is, if we're talking about redistributing wealth, this is not going to be a lot of large wealth distribution. The estate tax is 40% and only really applies to very rich people. And I mean, we could bring it down, but it's still a lot of people find ways around it. The only way you can do massive wealth redistribution is through a wealth tax, or I guess as Giannis suggests, some sort of collectivization that's sort of either.
Again, I find it baffling that the two people on the right of this panel are like just constantly saying, well, the rich people just won't pay their taxes. They won't comply. They find ways around these taxes. Well, then fucking hold them accountable. It's not that hard.
Either Stalinist or Maoist. I'm not quite sure what he's arguing.
When did I
else
exactly suggest that, Alison? I'm sorry, when did I exactly suggest that? Please do not
Get
do
her.
this.
Get her.
Play
Get her.
the ball, not the man.
I'm sorry.
And
Get her.
especially not with kicks that are completely out of order.
Get her.
This is the very meaning of a
He's so charming when he hits back. Ugh, what the hell?
red herring, quite literally.
Yeah.
Well, but how else are you going to take a lot of wealth from rich people and give it to poor people if it's not through taxation?
Well, you did hear me in my 4-minute introduction refer to the two Roosevelts. Both Theodore and Franklin effected massive wealth redistribution through breaking down corporate power, putting the financial genie in the bottle, and embarking upon a process of pressing into public service idle cash of rich people.
Yes.
So you may...
Yes. So when he's talking about idle cash, he's talking about all of the wealth that the wealthy sequester away and do nothing with. You guys realize that when the wealthy make more money, they don't do anything valuable with that money, for the most part. It's not like they're investing all the money they get into new businesses. It's not like they're doing anything with it. No, they're buying like fucking Monet paintings and like, I don't know, like paying absurd money to have like a yacht within a yacht. That is not stuff that circulates through our economy in an effective way. Yeah, the US gave $9.4 trillion to the corporations and the wealthy this year. Yeah.
Want to dismiss your own tradition
I mean,
of your own country,
I would
the two Roosevelts,
I would disagree
by
with
calling
that.
me a Stalinist, but I think that this is, this simply lessens the quality of the conversation.
No, I would argue
Alison,
more that the New
Wait, is she gonna argue that like the New Deal didn't redistribute wealth?
I want to withdraw the Stalinist, Maoist comment so that we can move forward.
I would like you, Alison, to do this.
I do. It was unfair.
Please do.
It was unfair, but I do think
It
you're
was grossly
mischaracterizing
offensive,
a bit.
Alison. It was not just unfair.
I'm sorry.
It was
He was so charming at first, but now he's really diving in. Because, yeah, it is grossly offensive to compare your debate opponent to, like, fucking Stalin. Like, holy shit.
grossly insulting.
Giannis,
Okay,
I wouldn't
but she's
have said
withdrawn
what
it.
Yes.
I
Yes,
admire
Larry.
you for withdrawing it.
I would not have said what Allison said. But when you write in 2020, my dream is to end capitalism. You need to be prepared to it. That's what you wrote in 2020. You need to be prepared to accept that people are going to read it in that kind of.
What? No, ending capitalism does not mean that you're Stalin. Does not mean that you're murdering millions of people.
I'm happy to answer that.
But Larry, that's wait a minute. Can we just stop? For
Hang on a second. Larry
and Allison. Wait a minute. This has nothing to do. This has nothing to do with what Yanni may or may not have written years ago. This debate is about whether now is the
totally
time
proud
to
of what I've written.
redistribute the wealth.
Let him defend himself.
All right, I want to move
Larry,
on to
can I address your question?
My position
I
is
need,
very.
it's a
my
personal
position is
question
very-
and I need to
Moderator, I'm
address it.
calling a timeout.
We need
As
to
moderator,
have-
I'm calling a timeout on this. As moderator, I'm calling a timeout on this. That's why at Intelligence Squared we sort of discourage
okay, you go
labels
enjoy
and
actual
ad
Jake,
hominem,
okay? Thank you for hanging out so much,
argumentation,
Canadian
because we
left
then go
support.
down a rabbit hole of an individual feeling offended, and we go around many circles.
And you do very well.
I appreciate, Allison, that you withdrew it. So thank you.
Wait,
you start-
I wanted to hear what Giannis was going to ask Larry Summers.
from the idea that you're going to wage some kind of war on the billionaires. Even if you win, you're not going to take the money out of the system.
What?
Welcome back to That's Debatable, presented by Bloomberg and Intelligence Squared. The motion, is it time to redistribute the wealth? In 2019, there were an estimated 2,825 individual billionaires in the world. Of those, 788 were in the United States. What does the modern global billionaire class mean for the economy and for politics today?
You guys understand, right? Like how insane is it that so many of our lives are wrapped up in the well-being of like 788 people? We're a country of 300 million people. Why are we accountable to these 788 people who to like run everything?
Billionaire class mean for the economy and for politics today? Here's more from two of our panelists, Robert Reich and Larry Summers, who both served in the Clinton administration, but who take seriously, starkly different positions on America's economic future.
Would Jeff Bezos be as motivated as he was to create Amazon if at the end of the rainbow was $2 billion instead of $200 billion? In other words, do we need the kind...
Yeah, by the way, no individual can even conceptualize what a room full of $1 billion $1 bills would look like. You can't even conceive of that much money. You can't even conceive of how much money $1 billion in 100 bills would look like. $100 bills. Like, the idea that, like, you wouldn't, like, individual business owners wouldn't be motivated, like, by becoming millionaires or, like, even, like, single-digit billionaires, like, holy shit. That's insane.
Kinds and magnitude of riches that are extraordinary, that are new, that we haven't seen in this country before, in order to actually get Steve Jobs or Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos or anybody else to do what they are doing. Now, when you talk about deserving, when you talk about the word deserving, that assumes that the market itself is neutral. But the market is not neutral. The market has been created by human beings, by legislators and agencies and courts. And the wealthy, because of the influence they have, and I'll include big corporations, have changed the organization of the market over time. Yanni talks about antitrust law. Well, if antitrust law were enforced as it was enforced 40 years ago, the chances are the big high-tech companies would not be nearly as large as they are right now. They would still be doing a lot of maybe good things, maybe not so good things, but antitrust has become a dead letter pretty much, largely because of the lobbying and political power and also the public relations exercises that a lot of the wealthy, including big corporations, have undertaken. We could talk about bankruptcy laws. We could talk about securities laws. Why were the banks bailed out and almost nobody sent to prison? And why is Dodd-Frank, that piece of legislation that's supposed to prevent us from going down that rabbit hole of financial calamity, why has that been watered down by the big banks? Because of political power, because they have so much wealth in the system. Larry, you know that. You and I have been there on the front lines.
Robert, I'm jumping in. I'm jumping in because I want to move on to something else, but I want to let Larry respond briefly to that point, and then I want to move on.
Here's the problem. most of the reforms, increased antitrust and so forth that you talk about, they are good ideas. They should happen. The problem is that you take somebody who's got $10 billion and you make them have $3 billion, they've got plenty of money to do the kind of lobbying that they do. So there are approaches that would stop us from having those policies, but they're not launching some kind of attack that starts from the objective of redistributing the wealth. So the approach I favor anyway, is an approach that starts from the objective of having a better, fairer society. And that'll lead you to want to have better antitrust law. That'll lead you to want to have stronger financial regulation. But if you start from the idea that you're going to wage some kind of war on the billionaires, even if you win, you're not going to take the money out of the system because it's going to come from corporate treasuries, which will still exist even when you've taken a lot of money from the billionaires. So the question...
Yeah. Why are you bringing up a different issue? Yeah. No one is saying taxing billionaires would solve all of the problems. It just means it's part of the solution. Then you go after the corporate treasuries.
The question is, what's your central theme for responding to the problems of society? And pointing to billionaires and saying we should take their money away may feel good, but it's an ineffective political strategy that doesn't respond to the problem. And when you do take their money away and they dodge it by giving it away to a set of foundations and charities that will lobby for all the costs.
Yeah, then you... What? All of their arguments just come back to, like, they'll find ways around it. Well, like, we can shut down those loopholes, Larry. It's not that hard. Just fund the IRS.
Causes you loathe, you will have the problems you're worried about to a greater extent. So I share your commitment to a fairer society. The question is whether a political strategy like that Bernie Sanders used this spring of focusing on tearing down the wealth is the right way to get to what you and I both want to get to in the United States.
I don't think Larry Summers wants to get to the same place that either of these two people want.
All right, Larry.
You are begging the question. You are begging the question. You're using metaphors that actually don't have any bearing.
He's mad. Mad
upon what is actually being discussed. The real issue here, and let's agree and let's stipulate, the goal is a fair society.
Time out, because we have to move along.
It destroys the market.
Man, I wish they would stop putting in these commercial breaks.
Incentives and signals to have so much wealth concentrated in such few hands.
True.
I want to move on to the next part of our debate, and what we're going to be doing now is actually bringing in our global audience. Over the past few weeks, thousands of people around the world alerted to this debate, submitted their point of view by making an argument on the topic. We will use now artificial intelligence to help us understand what matters most to this global audience, what arguments and ideas that they thought were most important. And we did that by turning to IBM Watson, which uses AI to scale public opinion. Let's take a look at how that works.
First, people around the world submit their arguments online. Then, the AI assesses the quality of the arguments, filtering out any irrelevant submissions, and sorting the remaining arguments into for and against. Next, the technology identifies the recurring key points, ranking them based on their quality and their frequency. Finally, the AI creates a coherent narrative of the strongest...
This freaks me out, like this process and relying on an AI to sort out good and bad arguments.
...and most prevalent points for both sides of the debate.
Okay, and now we get to hear it, a selection of the key points and arguments that our global audience, thousands of people around the world, thought were most important on this topic. So let's go to that.
Hello. Ahead of this debate, more than 3,500 arguments were submitted on the motion it's time to redistribute the wealth. The following analysis used AI models to identify the critical key points made by each side. 56% were for redistributing wealth, with 20% of submissions arguing that there is currently too much wealth inequality in the world. One argument was that income inequality has increased dramatically over the past few decades, causing excessive suffering to large populations, and that if wealth is not redistributed, far greater will suffer. Another key point for the motion was that redistribution of wealth will allow those with less opportunity to achieve success. People also think huge wealth gaps lead to social unrest and decreased security for all. The remaining 44% were against the motion, with 15% of submissions arguing that redistributing wealth would discourage some people from working hard. One argument in support of this is that
I love this argument, right? Because it's basically just like, well, I think other people would work less if they couldn't be billionaires, which is such a wildly stupid thing to assume.
Redistributing the wealth discourages individual initiative, entrepreneurship, and accountability for choices. Please visit the website to see the full results. Good luck to the human debaters.
All right, and as we continue with the human debaters, it was interesting to hear the global audience hitting on some of the same dividing lines, but there was one I want to zero in on that was brought up in that analysis that we haven't heard, whether there would be a behavioral impact on those whose wealth would increase as a result of a redistribution, that it would discourage the desire to work.
Yes, the lazy
Giannis,
poors, exactly, Meat Bomb.
That there would be a moral hazard to redistribution of the wealth. What's your take on that?
If anyone, a singer, a film director, whatever, produces a service, a performance, and the public out there are prepared to give millions in order to experience that, I'm quite happy for them to have it, as long as they pay their income tax and they are, legally okay. But what happens once he...
Oh yeah, it's the wealthy who are the lazy ones. True. Guys, wait, do you think Jeff Bezos works 2 billion times harder than anyone in his factory? Like, anyone in his warehouse where, like, people, like, just drop dead of exhaustion and, like, break their backs and, like, literally destroy their bodies to make him money? Or do you think he just, like, he can make, like, he has a couple meetings, during the week, and then he can just, like, fuck off and do what he wants? Like, yeah, he can, like, literally just invest his money into stocks and, like, make money that way. Like, when you invest in the stock market, you don't have to do shit. You don't have to do shit. It's incredible. You just make money. The hardest I ever worked in my life, I was paid the least, FYI. True.
Has accumulated this money in a financial system that breeds a lot more money at the expense of stagnation for the many out there who are not simply, as I said, left behind, but they are held behind by very low investment in good quality jobs, in high technology and so on. So this is why we need seriously to tackle concentration of power, corporate power, and of wealth. This is why we need to redistribute wealth in a big bang way like it happened under the two Roosevelts, because it stifles innovation. It destroys the market incentives and signals to have so much wealth concentrated in such few hands.
True.
And Alison, I want to thank you for the answer, Giannis. It took it a little bit away from the question that I asked, although you started at it. But I do want to hear from the other side on this question of whether there's a moral hazard to people who have less now getting more in a redistribution, or would that actually be a beneficial thing?
Well, I'm not sure. I've never really completely bought the argument that Jeff Bezos would have only worked as hard if he only made, 500 million versus, several billion. But I do think there are definitely consequences. Again, I'm still not clear.
Several billion. As if anyone who starts a business, could expect to grow it to, like, $1 billion corporation. Let's see. net worth Jeff Bezos. Oh, yeah, you know, he just made several $1 billion. That's why he's worth $191 billion.
Clear on how we're redistributing wealth. I guess the one thing we're all agreeing on is on higher capital income taxes. And what that certainly does do is, I'm not sure it will reduce the incentive to work hard, but it will certainly reduce the sort of the gains from investing. And so whenever you make an investment, it's not that the money just sits there idly. It's not like the money of the rich is just idle. It's actually invested. And usually they put their money in something called a risky asset. And when you have a high capital income tax, you know, that lowers the returns from risky investment, which might mean, I mean, maybe they'll still start to try to find a sort of good company, but...
Well, yeah, it would lower the return from risky investment. Yeah. Because it's risky. You would still be getting a higher return on your investment than if you were doing a safe investment. Either way, it would just mean you would get a little bit less. Holy shit.
But where will the capital for that company come from? Because often it's rich people who invest in sort of new startups and are willing to take on that risk. And the returns from that...
Yeah, you know, it's better than lower returns getting bailed out by the taxpayers. Yeah, we've had to bail out capitalism, like, what, 5 times in the last 10 years?
Investment will be smaller. And so it maybe won't reduce the incentives to work hard, but it will reduce the incentives to invest. And that's just as important.
Let's be clear about where we agree and where...
No, it's not as important. It's literally not as important.
We disagree. I don't think there's anybody here, possibly Allison is in the category, but certainly I am in agreement with Bob and Giannis that a more progressive tax system would be desirable. That's not the question.
Oh, a more progressive tax system. You mean something that would distribute the wealth?
Question is whether the center of the strategy should be around taking from the wealthy, which runs the risk.
Where do you think you're gonna get the wealth, my dude? Why would you tax people who have less more than you tax the wealthy?
That things will be pushed
to... You gotta tax either the working class or the capital class, my dude. You can't be, like, hedging your bet here and saying, like, oh, you just tax... you know, the middle class. The middle class is disappearing. It's being absorbed by the rich or being knocked down into the working class. The middle class was always an illusion. Okay? When we're talking about these things, his position is like, yes, more progressive tax system, but we have to we can't tax the rich. We have to tax the working class, which means taxing people who already have very little even more.
A point where you will do substantial damage to the economy in terms of incentives.
Yeah, you know what destroys incentive structures too? When people who are working literally can't afford to get any kind of incentive. You know, they're working just to live. Yeah, that kind of destroys incentive too, okay?
Bob's absolutely right. I've written in favor of higher capital gains taxes in terms of stepped up base.
And I should clarify, it destroys incentive because there's no realistic way for someone to escape from that life. You know, like, I was talking with Ruel the other day, and we were talking about how, like, you have to, in order to escape abject poverty in the United States of America, you have to be, like, a literal musical genius, or you have to be, like, a literal, like, sports savant, you know? Like, most people can't just do it by working hard. If people could do it by working hard, black people in this country wouldn't be disproportionately poor, okay? Like, the argument here is absolutely ludicrous. And if we continue down this route of not like taxing the rich, what ends up happening is that the wealth distribution keeps getting siphoned up to the top, which leaves the people on the bottom with less and less and less, which means that it's harder and harder and harder to make the leap. And because the middle class is kind of this mirage left over from FDR era reforms, and also from like the height of capitalism in the United States, there will be fewer and fewer spots for that middle class to actually exist. And instead, it will just be constantly, like their wealth will just be slowly drained by capital, or it will be, you know, in very, very rare cases, bumping them up into the upper class, upper capital class. My economic advice to everyone is simple: be a bank. Yeah, absolutely, Revolt Rise.
In terms of closing the state tax loophole, there are things we can do that will raise money from people who are wealthy in order to make necessary public investments.
Yeah, that's literally what we're talking about, Larry. Where have you been for this entire debate? Like, your argument is that we shouldn't take money from the rich, and then you turn around and you're like, well, we should close the loopholes they use so that we can tax them more money. Yeah, Larry, that's the entire fucking discussion. It's the entire discussion, Larry. We're talking about redistributing wealth from the wealthy to the working class, and one of the ways you can do that is through closing loopholes, Larry. No one has disagreed with you. You keep talking about it. No one's disagreed with you. And we can do that, and we can also have a wealth tax, and we can also tax corporate assets. We can do all of these things. It's not mutually exclusive. The wealthy will still be wealthy after they pay those taxes
in our country, and those investments should be disproportionately paid for by people who are wealthy. And yes, we should do things that reduce the influence of money in our politics and in our policy process. That Agreed. Is not the debate. The debate is whether the basis of the economic strategy should be some concept not of raising money for necessary public functions from those who are most fortunate.
Gracchus, no kidding.
But whether the center of our economic strategy should be taking from the people who are most successful in order to have substantial distributions to the rest of us. And I think a society, not an economic strategy based on growing the economy is better.
That is wrong.
Here's the rub, Brady. If we don't pay enough taxes, the government has to borrow the money from the rich, who charge interest. If they don't pay taxes, they make more money. Yeah. I mean, yeah. When you're right, Revolt Rise.
Been a strategy based on taking and redistributing.
Okay.
He literally talked about closing tax loopholes as a way to get more money out of the rich. He literally just talked about taxing the rich more. I don't think Larry Summers showed up and understands what... I think he's confused about what this debate is about. It's literally called wealth redistribution. That's the entire subject. Absolutely he does. Do you think... Wait, Revolt, do you think he's being disingenuous throughout this entire debate? Or is he just confused and old? Yes? Okay.
Let me just, if I can. Larry is trying to restate and reinterpret and reframe what we're debating.
Yep.
Let me go back to what we were actually talking about.
Yep.
If we adopt many of the policies that Larry and I believe Yanni also have supported, everything from stricter antitrust enforcement to a more progressive income tax to better regulation of financial institutions, and I could go on, and the list is quite long. The consequence of all of these would be to redistribute wealth from the people at the top to the middle class and below.
Yep.
Now, why do you call that a strategy that is a strategy of envy, or a strategy that is based somehow on the goal of redistributing wealth? No, the consequence would be to redistribute wealth because we are trying to do other things. We're trying to both provide revenue for a variety of purposes that are publicly needed, and we're also trying to, at the margin, reduce that kind of political impact that great aggregations of wealth in corporations and by individuals have created. Now, that's what we are actually debating. We're not debating whether redistribution itself should be or necessarily is the goal. We're talking about the consequence of policies that we all agree on.
Let's raise taxes in the right way. Yes, let's have the right regulation, but let's not make tearing down the wealthy the theme and organization of our economic policy.
Why not? The majority of people in this country aren't wealthy.
Let's move on to round three, the resolution one more time. It's time to redistribute the wealth. Here making his closing statement in support of the motion, Robert Reich.
In 2015, a year before the last election, I was out in Minnesota and Wisconsin and Missouri, a lot of Rust Belt states, southern states, doing research for a book. I was doing free-floating focus groups. And I kept on asking people, middle class, working class people, many of them hourly wage workers, who do you support in the upcoming presidential race? And most of them came back to me and said something quite surprising. In the same sentence, they said, we like Bernie Sanders and we also like Donald Trump. Now, I was amazed when I first heard that because I had never heard those two men, the names, in the same sentence. How could that possibly be? But what I discovered after listening to their stories, these middle-class, working-class people in the Rust Belt and in the South, what I heard from them is, we want somebody who's going to shake things up. We want somebody who's anti-establishment. We want somebody who's going to be on our side. In other words, what we have created in this country, because of the enormous power of great wealth concentrated in the hands of a few, because of the enormous power of big corporations, concentrated power in terms of their political ability to get what they need, people in this country believe the game is rigged, and they are willing, again.
It is rigged. They believe it is rigged because it is rigged. You just perfectly encapsulated that it is rigged, indeed, because the wealthy wield so much more power than the working class.
And again, whether they are on the left or the right, Democrats or Republicans, to support somebody who they believe is going to topple the power structure.
Yep.
That is a recipe for instability.
So I also have a story. Last March, Kylie Jenner, the reality show and makeup mogul, at just 21 was declared a billionaire when she sold 51% of her cosmetics company for $600 million.
Fucking kill me.
Although about a year later, as people looked a little bit more closely, or the company was run by a public company that was a little bit more rigorous, it was revealed that, well, Ms. Jenner is indeed a very wealthy woman. She is not a billionaire. And I think this story reveals a couple things. One, we really don't know how wealthy a lot of people are. If you have an incentive to make your wealth look larger, you can. If you have an incentive to make it look smaller, like you have a tax liability, you also can do that.
Yeah, you can lie about how much money you have. If I'm walking down the street in like a really fancy outfit, and like somebody comes up, is like, how much money do you have in your bank account? I can lie and say, I have $100 million, and they don't know because I lied and they have no other data points to go on.
And Kylie Jenner also shows, we might have mixed feelings about the wealthiest people. The Kardashians are a divisive bunch of people. But you can't deny that the wealthiest people in America, a lot of them made their money in not a zero-sum way. They created value. They created jobs. They created products that we use every day. And economist William Nordhaus estimates that innovators only capture 2% of the economic value they create. So is there scope for more equality, for improving the safety net?
What is this woman doing on this panel? She hasn't said anything valuable. She's trying to make the case that, like, business owners and the capital class don't make enough money because they're not getting like the value of the value of what they're investing into the company. And what on top of that, like why bring up the Kylie Jenner story? It had nothing to do with what they were talking about. Like Kylie Jenner shouldn't be a billionaire. She used her family's money to start up the company. It's not like she had a roadside stall for cosmetics and then worked her way up, saving every dollar, brilliantly running her business. No, she's so wealthy that she can pay other people to run her business for her. Yeah, she was taking out Instagram ads and mass marketing campaigns on social media. And again, I don't know how involved she is with that company at all. You can hire people to do your job for you when you're that rich. Yeah, she's spraying her defensive ink into the debate. Yeah, this is wild. She's arguing Kylie Jenner worked to make that company. I mean, I'm not going to say that Kylie Jenner didn't do any work. If I assume that she was involved in the running of the company to some degree, yeah, running a company is work. That doesn't entitle you to all of the profits of the company, you know? And then she sold it. So now she's literally not involved in running the company, unless she's on the board of directors or something. Holy moly. Hello, Sushi. How's it going?
For expanding the equality of opportunity? I mean, absolutely. I think these are the hallmarks of a civil...
Hey, I know you can quote a lot of really fancy statistics about Kylie Jenner's company. How many people worked their way up the ranks of Kylie Jenner's company and made use of those economic opportunities in order to, enter the capital class themselves? Why don't you go that step further? You all of these right-wing economists always talk in these vague generalities of oh, it helps the economy, the economy's booming, look at the stock market. Look at all the opportunities these companies created. Opportunities to do what? Is it an opportunity to live a good life? Or is it an opportunity to be a wage slave who's just barely making enough to pay rent, you know?
Society. But there are always trade-offs in cost to redistributing resources. And wealth redistribution tends to pose the most costs and offer the fewest benefits.
If life under capital...
Boss 88888, there's no evidence that shows that billionaires or millionaires leave when taxed more. That is largely a myth based on anecdotes. The actual data and studies, which I've gone over before on stream, indicate that that is not something that actually happens in real life. Now, it could happen, but in which case, sure, that's fine. Don't let their companies do business here. Leave a giant power vacuum for other companies to build up and have competition. I'm fine with that.
Capitalism resembled the 100-meter sprint in the Olympic Games. Of course, it would be absurd to ask the fastest athletes to slow down or to stop them from going fast in support or in solidarity with the laggards. That would have been absolutely ridiculous, and nobody would want to watch this race. But life is no Olympic Games. It resembles more these days the Roman arena, in which very well-armed gladiators are facing victims that are weaponless, victims who are defeated not because they did not try hard enough or because they were not clever enough, but because they were unarmed, because of the asymmetry in the initial distribution of armor, of wealth. You see, for a while now, I think we know that, don't we? Hard work can no longer be relied upon to lift people from poverty. This is the tragedy of the last 30 years. But let's finish off positively.
Halcyon
And
Days
let me
87. Thank you very much for hitting
convey
that
to
follow
Larry
button.
my kind of
I
socialism.
appreciate it, friend.
The kind of ideal that fires me up. You know, it will be a sporting parallel. But it's not going to be the Olympics. It's going to be the National Football League.
The problem is UBI under capitalism just gets abused by capital. It's just a way of redirecting money to capital from the public. And I think that there are better ways to implement UBI. And the first step is we need to get rid of capitalism.
Your NFL, where in the interests, remember, in the interest of competition, not fairness, teams face a harsh salary cap, and the best players, the best young players, are forced to sign up for the weakest of teams. So by preventing the successful team from monopolizing the best players, the NFL's constraints liberate the true spirit of competition. This is the point about, socialism, which is NFL, living together with markets, in sin with harsh competition, which is what the NFL is I think, a good model for the future.
I think Giannis showed what this debate is about very powerfully in what he just said. By signing up for the resolution that put central focus on the redistribution aspect, he showed where he was. He thought the NFL, where their salary caps put on people, where the best players aren't allowed to go work for the best teams, where it's all centrally controlled, he held that
thank you
out
for the follow.
as a model for how our society should be organized. And that's the kind of direction you head.
Larry, he put that forward as a model because it demonstrates that leads to a competitive state of affairs, Larry. That's why he was using the example, because our entire system revolves around competition, Larry. If you don't have those systems in place, then the best players just go to the wealthiest team, Larry. And then the wealthiest team can then dominate the other teams.
When you make redistributing wealth the central theme of your policies, rather than creating a better society for the middle class, the central theme of your societies. And that's not where I think we should go, and I think it's pretty dangerous. And here's a way of thinking about it. I ask myself the question, would it have been better if there were more people like Andrew Carnegie? If there were more people, for all his flaws, like John D. Rockefeller? Would we be a better, more flourishing society with more of that or with less of that?
Larry, you know that these guys were like running monopolies, right? Larry, you're an economist. You know that monopolies are inherently bad for capitalistic competition. Larry, these guys spawned economic models that destroyed our planet, Larry. Larry, they were hated by everyone, Larry. They hired goons to kill their workers, Larry. What are you doing? What is coming out of your mouth right now? Larry!
Would we be better if we had 5 more people who started in America like Steve Jobs? I think we'd have been better. So yeah.
Larry, you spent most of this conversation talking about how capital has too much power in our political system, and now you're advocating for us having more people who have that power over our political system. What the fuck are you talking about?
Yes, let's raise taxes in the right way. Yes, let's have the right regulation. But let's not make tearing down the wealthy the theme and organization of our economic.
He's just bickering about the aesthetics. All of his policies that he put forward in this debate also tax the wealthy. He's just bickering about the aesthetic look of it.
Policy.
All right, that concludes the final round of the debate. Let's look how it went.
Did they
Our
get,
audience
wait,
cast a
did they,
vote
do they not get like final like sign-off words?
before and after the arguments, and it is the difference Between the first and the second vote, that determines our
More
winner.
wealthy people
Here are the
more wealth
results.
to redistribute.
On the first vote, on the resolution, it's time to redistribute the wealth, 57% of our audience watching agreed, 20% were against it, 23% were undecided. That's the first result. We're looking for the difference. So in the team arguing for the resolution, it's time to redistribute the wealth, their first vote was 57%. Their second vote was 59%. They pulled up 2 percentage points, which is now the number to beat. Let's look at the other side. The team arguing against the resolution, their first vote was 20%. Their second vote was 37%. They pulled up 17 percentage points.
What? What are you doing, viewers? What are you doing? The arguments against redistribution were so bad. They were so bad, though.
Points. That means that they are the winning team. The team arguing against the resolution. It's time to redistribute the wealth. Declared.
Wait, what? Wait, what? They were
37%.
They were declared the winner because they convinced more undecided people, but more people are in favor of redistributing the wealth. This is fucking stupid.